What is going on, everyone? Happy Thursday. Welcome into another edition of GC Live at the Buzzer with your host, Jack Veltri here. Appreciate all of you guys tuning in. We are going to be talking about the business of the hour here, the prime story here. South Carolina loses 66-63 to Vanderbilt on Wednesday night in a real tough loss, a game that South Carolina probably should have won, but nevertheless, another real gut wrenching type of loss for the Gamecocks in a game that definitely felt like they probably were the better team in this game in some cases, but. Got to give a lot of credit to Vanderbilt. They also, despite not playing, particularly great, they made South Carolina pay for some mistakes in this game, and that's ultimately where this game was lost. So before we get rolling, if you guys are not already, would really appreciate it. You guys wouldn't mind subscribing to Gamecock Central's YouTube page. It takes you 2 seconds. Just you can click off of the stream at any time if you're listening on YouTube and just hit the subscribe button. Definitely appreciate it. It takes 2 seconds and it doesn't cost you anything. And then as well, give a thumbs up on this video if you're watching live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're watching. And then if you're listening, really appreciate it if you're listening on our podcast streams. So like R.L. Smith says, like and subscribe. So definitely would appreciate that. So appreciate all you guys tuning in. And let's jump right into it. We got a question here from Big Red. Is this Vandy game similar to the Bama game for the football team, the turning point? What do you mean by that? Like, what are we talking about here? From like the standpoint of Vanderbilt beating Alabama, and that was like the turning point in their season. Like, what are we comparing this to? Because South Carolina has lost, 4 straight games in men's basketball, and so if we're talking about Vanderbilt beating South Carolina in basketball, no, Vanderbilt's a good team this year. They got a new coach in Mark Byington, and obviously they had Jerry Stackhouse for the last few years, but Vanderbilt is despite not playing great last night, they're still I think they're not too bad this year, honestly. They're 14-3 now in the year, so they're definitely having a much better season than they did last year. So not really, unless you want to clarify, Big Red, I'm not really sure what the connection is here, what you're alluding to with South Carolina, but I'll be happy to answer if you want to clarify on that. But yeah, so anyway, this game last night, I think we gotta start out with the turnovers. I mean, that's ultimately where this game was lost for South Carolina. It is hard to win a basketball game when you commit 25 turnovers. Me personally, I don't think I've ever seen. I've only covered this team for full time speaking the last 2 seasons, like last year when they went to the tournament, and then now this year. And I covered a little bit in the first year of Lamont Paris's tenure, but a lot of it was just like covering from home virtually because a lot of road games. And keep in mind, I was interning at the time, and I think I only covered 1 game in person in 2022. So in the last 2 years, though, I really haven't seen a team, South Carolina or any other team, have that many errors. Like 25 turnovers is an absurd number. Like I've seen this team get into the double digits many a times now. Like I think I'm trying to think. They had 15 in a game earlier this year. I know they had a ton against, I think like just off the top of the dome here, DePaul in that Arizona tip-off tournament last year. I think they had maybe like 17 or so. It was something absurd. But the point is, I have not seen a team have 25 turnovers in a game. The Lamont Paris felt the same way. So it's a real issue when you didn't even like, other than the turnovers, honestly, you played decently enough to win this game potentially. Like you pretty much in almost most metrics, you outshot Vanderbilt, granted by 1 percentage point, but still for the sake of argument here, you were 43% from 3-point range compared to 19% for Vanderbilt. You went 18 for 23 at the free throw line, better than Vanderbilt. You also won the rebound battle. But the big battle you did lose was the turnover battle, and by a wide margin. And when Vanderbilt has 22 points off those turnovers, that's an issue. And it's something that has been a problem for Carolina all year long, it feels like. It's never gotten this bad, if you know what I mean. Like, again, they had 9 turnovers against Auburn, but 16 in the first half, 9 more in the second half yesterday was really what killed this team in a lot of ways. And it's a shame because if they cut those turnovers down, say by from 25 to 20, maybe that's 5 extra possessions there. Where even if you miss on whatever shot you take or whatever, you have an opportunity to take a shot. At least so you have a 50-50 chance of putting the ball in the hoop. And on 5 attempts, I would wager to say South Carolina can make at least one of those, and that would either tie or put you behind by a point. So, or maybe in some cases you make 2 shots and you take the lead. So it's a lot of things that, like, again, South Carolina's got a lot going on right now to where it's just not enough to win. The turnovers were the issue yesterday. That's why you lost. You go back to the Auburn game last Saturday. For as well as South Carolina played at times in that game, you were held to 23 points in the second half, and you went the final 5 minutes of the game without a single point, and you missed some clutch free throws down the stretch. So it's like it's a combination of things now. It's those things from the Auburn game. It's the turnovers yesterday. South Carolina is finding different ways to lose games, and they should ease. I think they should be 2-2 right now, like in conference play. I'm not saying they should have beaten Auburn. It felt like they probably could have. If they hadn't gone those final 5 minutes without a single point, I think we're talking about a win there. I think South Carolina had opportunities to potentially maybe not put the game away, but put it in your favor to where it's Auburn having to drive down the floor and go for a game-winning or tying shot at the end of the game. But that's the reality of the situation, is that when you make mistakes like South Carolina does, teams are going to find ways to beat you. And look, even on a night where Vanderbilt, like I said, was not much better than you, the only way they were was in the turnover battle, which, I mean, they forced 15 steals, which is a crazy number to think about. But again, you played better than Vanderbilt in a lot of ways. It's just those turnovers really killed you, and it put you in a hole to where you had to climb back out of pretty much most of the game until you finally got things evened up in the final 6 minutes. And then down the stretch, you have chances to potentially go on a run. Like you went on, I think, like a 7-0 run to tie the game, and then right after that, South Carolina goes into, I think, like a 3-minute scoring drought. And this is near the end of the game, by the way, after they had already tied it. So that's the issue right there, is that the consistency isn't there for South Carolina. And I just think there's a lot of ups, and like basketball is a game of ups and downs, right? But like you can't be having like this can't be happening every game. It can't be something new. And that's the problem, is that when you have so many different issues that kind of, come and go, I guess, if you will, they're going to come back to bite you one way or another in certain games. Like, again, last night, the turnovers. A few nights ago, the scoring drought and not hitting free throws. So it's just a multitude of things that are really, uh, you know, damaging, this team's record right now. Like, again, they should potentially be 2-2 in conference play. And maybe even in some of the earlier games in the season, like Virginia Tech, Indiana, games like that where you lost, North Florida, like the games you lost earlier in the season. I mean, it's just it's so many different things that are the reason why you lost, and it's not one thing in particular. It's a different thing almost every game, it seems like. But last night, again, you had the game tied up in the final minute, and we'll get down to the 2 plays here that really changed the course of the game. Number one, South Carolina was able to tie the game. And it's actually 3 things. South Carolina was able to tie the game at 63, thanks in part to A.J. Hoggard, guard for Vanderbilt, transfer that came in, and he tripped Colin Murray Boyles. He basically just like grabbed at his ankles on a steal, and that was a flagrant one. Allowed CMB to go down the other side of the floor and tie the game on free throws. And then South Carolina gets possession back, and keep in mind, they were kind of running low on the shot clock. I think they had like 8 seconds left on the shot clock after calling a timeout. But Nick Pringle drives in, and I've watched the play back. Let's give a lot of credit to Devin McLaughlin. He made a great play on the ball, turning around, getting a hand on Pringle's, shot going towards the rim and knocked it out of bounds. And that was a shot clock violation. So that was a play that, yeah, we can say Pringle needs to go up stronger and make that play or whatever. But at the same time, let's give credit where it's due. That was a good play by McLaughlin there. On the next possession, Vanderbilt goes down the floor, a few seconds left. Hogard puts up a mid-range jumper. It's a good look. I mean, he got enough separation from Zachary Davis to take the shot, but clanks out. And this is where Pringle, I think, the big mistake for him came. And there was a rebound that him and McLaughlin were going up for. That if South Carolina grabs it, going to overtime, but he fails to grab the rebound because McLaughlin did a nice job of boxing him out. And and again, I looked up the size comparison. McLaughlin's 6'7", Pringle is 6'10". The only difference is McLaughlin has about 10 pounds on him. But even then, there is no excuse not to grab that rebound. Like, this is what South Carolina brought Pringle in to do. Like, again, you can't. It's impossible to ask someone to do everything, every single night. But like with Pringle, all you're really asking him to do is grab rebounds and be a force in the paint. But last night, when you only have 3 points, you have a few turnovers, you only grab 3 rebounds, and you have 5 fouls and you foul out. That's where there's issues. And to not grab that rebound there again, I don't think he was positioned in the best way either. And to make matters worse, McLaughlin grabs the ball 2 hands. Pringle only got 1 hand on it. I don't think he would have had a chance to really do anything with it. Maybe knock the ball out of bounds, which would have been pretty good, I guess. But McLaughlin grabs it with 2 hands, puts it right back up, and Pringle fouls on the way up for the N1. And that was basically the game at that point. So, look, it was an avoidable loss. You cut the turnovers down, you probably win this game. But again, it's not what happened last night, and there are a lot of issues. Let's get into some of the comments here. Big Red kind of bringing up the secondary point to what he mentioned earlier with if the Vanderbilt game is similar to the Bama game for the football team, like the turning point. And this is in reference to the turning point for South Carolina is where they go on a run after a slim loss. Well, you would have thought that would be the case after the Auburn game. Because again, ironically enough, South Carolina lost both of these last 2 games, 66-63. But you would have thought last night would have been, if there was any game that would have been the turning point, it would have been the one that came after that Auburn loss where you came so close to winning, had the lead in the final 2 minutes, and you couldn't get the job done. But with this game, again, you dug your own grave with 25 turnovers. I mean, that's you're going to hear about it a lot in this stream. It's just those turnovers, man. It killed you like easy. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see how they respond on Saturday when they go to Oklahoma. Maybe that's the turning point where you're playing an Oklahoma team that's lost 4 straight as well to open SEC play. But again, I felt like last night should have been the game where Carolina should have won. Like, again, you can't be losing a game like that, especially when you catch a team on a night where they haven't been that good. So I don't know. D Hunter, first one to like and already a happy subscriber. Appreciate you, D Hunter. Thank you so much for the like. And yeah, if you're enjoying this stream, wherever you're listening, give it a thumbs up. And if you're listening on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Gamecock Central, like I said. R.L. Smith says the last 2 games, the team had a chance to win down to the last minute. I think that is all I can ask for right now. Yeah, but I understand that. I understand. Like, it's good to see the team being in close battles, but at some point they got to win these games. And it's not like South Carolina is getting outplayed in the final minutes. Like, again, Auburn did a great job defensively in the second half, but South Carolina didn't help itself going 5 minutes without a bucket. It's not a recipe for success. And then last night, you miss out on some opportunities at the end of the game. You missed some free throws before CMB had gone to the line to tie the game, and missed the rebound. Nick Pringle getting blocked. I mean, it's things like that. The turnovers again. It's things like that where you're not helping yourself, and you probably should have won that game. Like I keep saying in this stream. R.L. Smith says again, the team has progressed from quote, yeah, we have no chance this game, quote, to quote, if we do this, this, and this, we can win. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. I mean, losing's losing. I mean, South Carolina is still 0-4, and just because there are no moral victories in my opinion. Like again, they play. Did they play? Have they played better these last two games? Yeah, like getting blown out by a combined 55 points in the first two games of conference play. It's hard. It's hard to be much worse than that. But I mean, yeah, but that's the thing. You shouldn't have to be thinking, okay, if they do this, they do that. If they clean up this, they clean up that. It should all like we're 17 games into the year, and we're still talking about the same things we were talking about at the beginning of the year. Like I think at times we're still questioning: does this team have the fight? Do they have the aggression, the physicality? Again, that was stuff we all saw in the Auburn game that they had. But we need to like it should be. It shouldn't even be brought up. It should be a given every single game. And maybe they are, but it just for some people, and I know I'm not the only one on this. At times I do feel like this team does lack a little bit of that, but that's just my opinion on that. But also, it's the turnovers. Again, the turnovers have been an issue all year long. It's not just a one game thing. When you turn the ball over as much as this team does, teams can take advantage. And 22 points off of turnovers is not a good number to look at for if you're South Carolina. So it's things like that you shouldn't like. It's 17 games in. Mistakes are going to happen. You're going to have bad games, but you didn't even play You didn't play terrible last night. I'll put that out there. I think this team played all right last night. But when you have those mistakes and you are racking up fouls and stuff, right or wrong calls, that's where you kind of get yourself beat a little bit. Big Red asks, "What's the bright spot on this team given their record?" Well, thinking about it a little bit, if I'm gonna be honest, I think I don't know. I think honestly, just based off of last night's game, I thought Morris Ugasuk played pretty well last night, and he had 20 points, 6 of 8 shooting, 3 for 4 from 3-point range. I mean, look, you'll see this if you go on to GamecockCentral.com sometime this afternoon around 2:30. I'll have a story out with 5 things we learned from last night's game. One of the things I did bring up that I'll mention to y'all now is South Carolina. The guard play hasn't been great this year, in my opinion, even with Jamari Thomas and Miles Studi on the floor. But missing those two guys, I put it out. I think Morris Ugasuk is probably South Carolina's best option at guard right now. And I don't think that's much of a stretch considering Jacoby Wright and Zach Davis went a combined 2 for 11 from the field last night. And they haven't been doing super great. And Arden Conyers is playing well, but the sample size still is kind of small to where we can't fully judge him as being the best guard on the team. Though I think he has the potential to be the best guard by season's end. But with Morris, he's shooting the best from 3-point range. He's giving you some good effort, I think. I mean, despite the turnovers here and there, which some of them have just been travels and whatnot. But I think he has been a real nice piece on this team, honestly. He's such an underrated player, in my opinion. Never started a game before these last two at South Carolina, and I think he made the most of his opportunity last night. That's what you're going to need from other guys. You need that. But if I'm thinking of other positives, I mean, like, I don't. That's the thing. It's hard to think of some bright spots because there's so many different things that have kind of gone wrong this season to where it's like the record is a reflection of how they've played at times. And yes, I know the schedule's been tough, and that's an excuse you can only use for a certain amount of time. When the issues you have are dating back to non-conference play, where yes, you're able to overcome some of the mistakes that you make because you're playing against lower tier opponents, like that's fine and all. But when you get to SEC play, this is my concern from the jump, is that the turnovers, the slow starts, things like that. If you play the right team that matches up very well against you, and is like an SEC team like Mississippi State or Bama or Auburn, whoever, Vanderbilt, these teams have a good chance to beat you, and that's what we saw in the first two games. And that's we're seeing better effort and close games now, but still, there's such a long way to go still for South Carolina to really get this thing right. Jeff 2001 brings up a great question. Where's the energy level they had in the Auburn and Clemson game? I don't know, honestly. I thought when they play with good energy, when they play with a chip on their shoulder, whatever you want to call it. They play more physical, aggressive. They seem to do better. It's just, again, those games where that they won against, or well, they lost to Auburn, but played well against Auburn and Clemson. I mean, you saw it there. And I think part of that has to do with having the home court and being, a raucous environment, whatever you want to call it. But, it shouldn't, again, it shouldn't have to be questioned. Like, you shouldn't have to question effort, energy, aggression, physicality, all that stuff. That should always be a given in a sport like basketball. But again, we are questioning it to some extent right now. And when a question like this gets brought up, it begs the question of like, what is going on, with South Carolina. But that's just my thoughts on it. But again, I did think it's sometimes the energy just hasn't been there for this team this year. EXO checking in saying, "What's up? Hello, EXO." Jeff 2001 brings up another good point. The lazy one-handed passing's got to stop. Yeah, the passing has been an issue, and it's part of why the turnovers are happening. And maybe not as much last night. It was a lot of steals. Like I said, again, Vanderbilt had 15 of them. And some of these turnovers were just, bad passes and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, look, South Carolina has been a lot worse, I think, passing the basketball around this year. And it's not necessarily a strength of this team. And again, I think that goes back to the point I made about the guard play where and again, I hate continuing to compare this team to last year's team because they're different. But it is noticeable that you don't have like a Talon Cooper out there that is the perfect distributor on the floor general, if you will. And he's that guy that you can always count on. And he did a great job of monitoring the offense and whatnot. But yeah, with this team, it's like I just don't feel like they have. I mean, Jamari Thomas is out right now, so maybe that would have helped big time. But having him as the point guard, but South Carolina just doesn't seem to have that go-to guy at the guard position that can be that type of player like Talon was last season. But again, it's so hard to replace a guy like that. So even then, I'm not making an excuse here, but it would have been tough either way to fill that void. Big Red asks, is youth on the team hurting us or is it a problem in mechanics? Good question. I think I don't think the youth is hurting South Carolina because, again, they have a lot of vets on this team. Like Jacoby Wright, Zach Davis, Pringle, CMB, BBV, even Morris. I mean, all these guys that played last night have been around the block for a little bit. Like I mean, most of those guys were from last year's team. Pringle obviously has a lot of experience in this conference, being at Alabama for a few years. And yeah, I mean, look, all of them have played a lot at South Carolina, and Cam Scott and Arden Conyers are the exceptions to that because they're the younger guys. But they weren't an issue last night. I didn't think. Conyers gave you 10 points on 3 of 8 shooting. He had 2 threes. Cam Scott had 5 points and 1 3 in 13 minutes. So it's not like the young guys were bad by any means last night. Again, it's not even like one player that is the issue. It's a team thing where the turnovers continue to happen. I don't like having to keep bringing it up, but it's true. It's the turnovers that are hurting this team right now with 25 of them. In most cases, they rack up. I mean, they're averaging about 12 a game right now, but normally they'll end up with about, somewhere in the double digits, maybe 10 or more, typically most of the time. But 25 is just an unacceptable number in most cases. EXO says, who's going to step up and help the team over the hump? Well, I think losing Studi and Thomas is a big blow now that we really do think about it. Like, yes, the team has been in the fight for a lot of these games without them, and it's only a 2-game sample size, but we'll see how things go moving forward. But you would have really liked to have those other 2 guys because maybe they make the difference ultimately in getting the wins and the games that you're losing. So for the time being, I think you really, if I'm going to boil it down to 2 players here, one of them has to step up. It's got to be Jacoby Wright or Zach Davis. You need more out of them. Like, Jacoby almost had a double-double last night, but he also went 1 of 6 from the field. And Zach only had 3 points in 28 minutes. You got to be more consistent. That's the thing. Where is the Jacoby Wright that started out the season so strong, played very well? He's now, holding down point guard duties basically, but you need more out of him as a 4-year guy here at South Carolina. And with Zach, we've heard all year long, all summer going back about how much his shot had improved and stuff. but I still see a lot of inconsistencies where he's got a good game here and there, but then it's a lot of mixed bag where you get performances like this. So you definitely want more out of those guys, but one of them would definitely help big time if they could, definitely start playing more to the level that most expect them to. And EXL also says, I'm just confused with some of the issues. The players should want to win. This is about the future, their future too. It's like they lack focus. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, there are a lot of there are a lot of things going on that definitely are confusing because it's like why should you have to question the fight and the energy and all that stuff? That should not, as I mentioned before from Jeff's comment, like you should not have to be questioning that as if you're watching as a fan. Like that's I don't know. That's something that and again you're getting paid to play and all that too with NIL now and stuff. But it's also like again this is the SEC. Like you're going to have to compete to win games. And I'm not saying South Carolina isn't, but it's like there are times where you notice like man, things just sloppy. They look out of it. I mean, there have been multiple cases of that so far this season. But yeah, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to fire away. But again, this game started off so slow last night. Both teams really couldn't do anything. South Carolina had its chances to really take hold and do something, but it was the end of the first half that Vanderbilt went on a 14-4 run over the final 4 minutes. And that got them the lead, I think, by 7 points going into the break at 33-26. And then they really held on to the lead most of the way. But give credit to Carolina. They were able to fight back, tie the game. It's just they weren't able to reclaim the lead. And that's where it's like you fought all the way back. But again, because of things that really killed you early on in this game and even late in this game too, you're coming away with a loss. So a lot to improve upon there. And again, it wasn't a bad game for well, I mean, in some cases it was, but like South Carolina has played much worse. Like believe me, but last night when you shoot better from the field, when you get the rebounds, you're doing all those things, but it's the turnovers. Like it's that one thing that really held you back last night in a big way. So you get that cleaned up, you play like you did last night. The rest of it, maybe even like the Auburn game. Honestly, I keep bringing that up. The last time we spoke, I brought that up. Like if you play like you did against Auburn, you're going to be able to win. That included minimizing the turnovers. You didn't do that last night, and that's kind of the result you got. So before we continue this conversation real quick, let's just talk about Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans right above me here on all of our GC Live programs. If you're in the market to buy a home or you need help with your mortgage, you don't know where to begin, and you need some help, Clint is your guy to get in contact with. He's been in the mortgage industry for more than 20 years. He's a lifelong Gamecock fan, and he's also a longtime supporter of Gamecock Central and all of our GC Live programs, hence why you'll see him above us here on all of our live streams and programs like this. So if you're interested, give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or you can go to clinthammond.com. Got a few more questions here, a few more comments, I should say. Big Red asks, how many of our losses are on Lamont Paris and how much of it is on play on the court? I think it's a mixture of both. I think Lamont is a good coach. I think he's a solid coach, to be honest. And anyone that feels he's not doing a good job this year, I think I disagree, to be honest. I think it's just a tough situation right now. We'll see what happens. I think Lamont mentioned it last night. Like they got to go back to the drawing board and get these turnovers figured out and how to kind of slow them down. And he made a good point last night that it kind of came down to, they were driving down the floor and Vanderbilt would kind of smack the ball out of their hands. And that's something that he said I'm paraphrasing here, but they have to practice someone from behind smacking down at the ball really hard and then still keeping the ball to go up to the rim. So if Carolina can figure that out, that shows me that, they're working on it and they're getting better at it. Obviously, they're going to work on it these next few days of practice, but we'll see how it translates over. That's the reflection of a coach, though, because the coach is always going to get the most blame, I think, more times than not. But, if the turnovers just don't seem to improve at all, maybe I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a player thing. Maybe it's just something's not clicking. I don't know. But I think it is a mixture of both. And, sometimes players also need to execute. Like it's okay to, say that. I think, in my opinion, like you should expect more out of guys like Jacoby, Zach, Nick Pringle. When those guys give you a combined 14 points last night, I mean, that's not going to cut it. And I mean, to really put it into perspective, they had 13 turnovers combined last night. Zach had 5, Jacoby and Nick both had 3. You got to clean that stuff up. I mean, if you make more shots, that's great, but you got to limit the turnovers too. Like that's really, really killing them right now. And RL Smith says the magic number stands at 10 wins. And we're talking about in general, or how many wins you think they're going to get in non or in conference play? Because that's two different things. I think South Carolina currently has 10 wins right now, 10-7 on the year, 14 games left to go in the regular season. And I'll bring this up again. Yes, South Carolina is going to be in the SEC tournament regardless of what happens this season, because all 16 teams will be going to the tournament. And it's single elimination. So it's pretty much going to be the same format as what baseball will be this year. Out in Hoover is that 16 teams, all of them will be out playing in the tournament, and it's single elimination. So for Carolina, I mean, look, by the time you get to the SEC tournament, ideally, if we're still going to talk about making the tournament and going on a run to get to March and all that, you need at least 9 wins. I think 9 conference wins really helps you out a lot. I mean, it's 500, and you still have some losses on your schedule for sure by that point. But if you're about 19, 20 wins in this league, with how tough it is, a lot of quad one opportunities still to go, I think you have a chance, at least in the conversation of things. Maybe not making the tournament for sure, but it gives you a much better idea of like, okay, there's a potential there. But anything less than that, I mean, 8 maybe, but like if we're talking 4 or 5 conference wins, I mean, forget about it. It's not happening. So long way to go. And I was talking about with Tyler Head on 107.5 The Game this morning. We keep mentioning or I think I don't even know if it's us or just in general it feels like just every time we talk about it's 14 games now. South Carolina probably needs to go about 9-5 to have a chance. That's going to keep dwindling down. Like when it gets to 13 games, it's going to be okay. They got to go 9-4. It's like, and then where does it end? Because if South Carolina keeps losing, their odds are going to go down significantly. So starting out 0-4 is not ideal. Again, I really do think this team is so much better than what the record is a reflection of right now. Like they got the pieces. I think they do. It's just, you got to put it together. And I don't think we should have to be saying that 17 games in the year, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer, and that's okay. But when you're in the heat of this conference and every game's tough, Oklahoma 0-4, but it's going to be tough going on the road there, playing at that arena. But for South Carolina, they gotta get going at some point, and I think they will. I still have some hope for this team. Like again, I think the fact that they almost won that game last night, despite everything that went wrong, and again, Vanderbilt did not play a great game. You play a team that plays a good game, you're probably going to get blown out. But if you catch a team like that on an off night, I mean, I like your chances. You just gotta, again, don't kill yourself with these mistakes. It's the turnovers, the scoring droughts, the things like that really push you out of reach of winning a game. Big Red asks, even if South Carolina doesn't make the NCAA tournament, could they still make the NIT? Very good question. It's possible. The NIT is basically for those teams that just miss out on making March Madness. So if we're talking about realistically, let's look at the NIT bracket from last year. I'll do that real quick. Let's take a look, because that'll give me a good idea of like, okay, what were teams' records and stuff, and how does that kind of reflect with what they're doing. Let's see. So let's see. You had some of the automatic qualifiers. You had Wake Forest with 20 wins, Providence with 21 wins, and again, this is last season. Ohio State had 20 wins, Cincinnati had 20 wins. The worst teams in here were LSU went 17-15, Georgia went 17-16. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, wait, yeah, I'm reading this right. And teams like Virginia Tech went 18-14, Nova went 18-15. So again, those are some of the teams that were automatic qualifiers and whatnot. A lot of other teams obviously made it and stuff. But and then, again, there were a lot of at-large bids in this where you have a lot of teams that were really good, like Xavier. Xavier was one of these teams on here that's kind of the outlier to all this. They went 16-17 and made it as an at-large bid. So again, I hope I'm, reading this all right here, from looking it up just to make sure. But again, that kind of gives you an idea of where South Carolina needs to be. They don't need to be perfect by any means. They probably don't need to get to 9 wins. That would help you. If you get to 9 wins, that should at least, if you don't make the March Madness tournament, that should definitely put you in line to be in the NIT. So I think somewhere around 16, 17 wins gives you a chance. But that's 6, 7 wins you need, and I don't know how you're going to get it because, again, your schedule is not necessarily favorable. Like after Oklahoma, you get Florida back at home next week, next Wednesday. Then you have Mississippi State at home, who you just got blown out by 35 points against recently on the 25th, and then it's Georgia on the road, A&M, go to Kentucky, Ole Miss, Florida again, this time in Gainesville. You go to LSU, Texas at home, at Missouri, Arkansas at home, Georgia at home, and then you go to Tennessee to end the season. So, Ken Palm's giving South Carolina a 14-17 record to finish the season right now in projections and 4-14 in conference play. If that were the case, that's not enough to make any tournament, in my opinion. But with the NIT, you get somewhere about 16, 17, even any higher than that probably puts you in a position to get there, I think. But again, we've seen South Carolina get left out of these things before, even when they've had great years. So, I don't know. We'll see. But, the focus, I think, should be on still getting to March Madness because, again, it's not impossible. The best way to do it is obviously to take care of business down the stretch here and start winning some games. But even if you don't, you can, hey, never say never to this. I know it sounds crazy. People will probably laugh, but if you make a run at the SEC tournament and you win the whole thing, you're an automatic qualifier at that point if you win the SEC championship, which would be obviously very hard to do. But hey, never say never. Crazy things have happened. It's not impossible. I guess there's always a chance. So I think that's going to do it for the stream. I think it was a good conversation you're talking about last night's game, a little bit of the future. Obviously, things never really get easy in this conference. You go play Oklahoma, you got Florida next week, you got Mississippi State. The schedule's always going to be tough. But if South Carolina continues to stay in these games like they have been lately, again, the nice positive, I forgot to mention this earlier, holding two teams straight to 66 points is much more on par for what we saw last year with the way the defense played. You continue to do that, I think you're in a very good position to where I think you're gonna knock the door down eventually. But again, it's easier said than done, but it is a good sign that the defense, for all intents and purposes, was pretty good last night. So see what happens moving forward. And EXO says, hoping for a better start in baseball. Yep, baseball is it's getting around the corner. So it is not too far away, under a month away. And R.L. Smith puts it easy here. All South Carolina has to do is score 67, and they are golden. Absolutely. Great point. That's a good way to wrap up the show. So the Gamecocks will be back in action on Saturday afternoon, 4 p.m. on ESPNU against Oklahoma. Another opportunity to try and get that first SEC win of the season under their belts. That's going to do it for now. I'll be back in action streaming and talking about the Oklahoma game on Sunday reset, GC Live Sunday reset on Sunday, probably sometime in the morning. So we'll see. I'll have more information as that comes closer to happening and whatnot. But yeah, that'll be the next time you guys hear from me on one of these live streams. But I appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Again, if you haven't already and you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, Facebook, wherever, be sure to give this stream a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Would definitely appreciate it a lot. So you guys are awesome. Appreciate all of you tuning in as usual. And I will see you next time. Have a great weekend coming up, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.